Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sky Knight. You know something I haven't done in a while? I haven't fiddled with Arch. Let's install Arch today. Alright, and we will quickly go over our virtual machine details here. We are going to be using UEFI, Arch Linux. We have 4 threads. We have a host pass-through for a CPU configuration. 1 sockets, 2 cores, 2 threads each. We are giving this virtual machine 40 gigabytes of storage. We are using our bridge networking, and we are using the VirtIO display driver. Alright, let's boot her up. Alright, and here we are at the base screen for technically the Arch Linux live environment. We are technically within Arch at the moment. I can't imagine there's going to be a heck of a lot that has changed with this since the last time that I have installed it, but let's give it a shot. First thing that I generally do is I check out my block devices, so LSBLK. That will list all of the block storage devices on your machine. In this case, it looks like the one that we are going to want to use is called VDA. So let's partition that up. fdisk, and then you have to give it the actual name of a disk. So dev VDA. And if you haven't used fdisk before, it's similar to cfdisk. There's just not a graphical environment. I'm used to fdisk. This is fine with me, so I'm just going to use fdisk. And it's not too terribly difficult to actually figure out what you're doing with fdisk. First off, let's create a GPT partition table because this is a UEFI installation. It's going to want GPT. So lowercase g to create the GPT partition table. And then let's create a new EFI partition. So type N for new. Keep partition number as default, 1. First sector, just keep it as default. Last sector, for this you're going to want to put plus 512M for plus 512 megabytes. I'm not sure where I saw the 512 megabytes suggested somewhere, or even if that's actually accurate that I saw that somewhere, but it's what I've always used, and I know it's extremely overkill and you're never going to fill up your boot partition with really any data at all, but this is just what I've always used. We're doing plus 512 megabytes, and then we need to change the type. So type in T to change the type, and since we only have 1 partition selected, it's not going to ask us which one. Or since we only have 1 partition available now, it's not going to ask us which one. I know that it is going to be partition type 1, because I've done this several times now. But you can press capital L to list them all. At the very top there, you'll see 1 EFI partition. That is what we want. So Q to quit out of that list, and 1. Then you can print P to print the selection, or print the current file system table that we have. So right now we just have the EFI partition that is 512 megabytes. Okay, let's create a new partition. This will be the root partition. So N for new, partition number 2 is fine. First sector, just take the default. Last sector, for this I am going to probably give it 15 gigabytes. So plus 15 G. And let's change the type of that one as well. Yep, keep partition, or select partition number 2 as the default. Yep, that's fine. Let's take a look. I know that there is Linux file system would be perfectly fine. To be a little more accurate, we could use option 22, Linux root. Actually, option 23, Linux root x86 64-bit. So let's do that. So 22 23. And finally, let's create a home partition. For this one, I'm going to keep partition number 3 as the default. That's fine. The first sector default is fine. The last sector default is fine because we want it to take up the remaining area of the disk. And let's change the type of that one as well. And for this, we're going to want to select 28 for Linux Home. Again, we could just select Linux file system for both of these, but to be more accurate, you could do this. It's not going to really make a difference. So 28. Generally, when I used to do this, I used to create LVM partitions on my machine, but we're not going to need to actually mess with the storage on this at all, so I don't think it's worth the effort. I'll probably do a video on logical volume management at some point. Yeah. So for now, you can see the menu again. Let's see what we have. So we have 512 gig EFI partition, we have a 15 gig root partition, and we have a 24.5 gig Linux home partition. Alright. W to write the table to disk and exit. Now if we list our block devices again, you'll see that we have 3 partitions on VDA. Now what we need to do is we need to assign file systems to each of these partitions. To do that, you just type in mkfs, and for the first one we're going to do is the EFI partition. It's mkfs.fat, and I believe this will be the FAT32 file system. It's just the file system that EFI partitions need to be in. And so make file system.fat, and you need to tell it what to apply that to. So dev VDA1. Now we're going to make a file system with extend4. I know Btrfs is probably objectively better. I just don't quite understand how it works yet, or how to properly utilize it, so that might be a later video, but I'm not going to be doing that now. So make file system extend4, dev VDA2, and for this we're going to give it a label. Label as root. And pretty much the same thing for VDA3, except the label is going to be home. Adding labels is super helpful, especially when you're looking through your fstab file. It gets super helpful if you have partitions on partitions on partitions on over several different disks. It makes everything much simpler. Okay, and now we have all of the file systems assigned. We're not going to create a swap partition at all. It's a virtual machine, we're not going to need one. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to actually mount these partitions onto the, mount location. So to do that, type in mount /mnt. So mount, target, and then the source. So dev VDA2. So I had that backwards. Mount, source, then target. VDA2 MNT. So what that just did is it mounted the VDA2 partition, our root partition, on /mount on this machine. Now what we need to do is we need to create our EFI and our home directories because they don't currently exist on MNT. As you can see, it is just an empty directory with a lost and found. So let's make a directory of mount home and mount boot EFI. You're going to throw the -p flag on there because the directory boot does not currently exist. So if you try to create a directory called EFI in the boot directory, it will error out saying that it does not exist. -p will just recursively create any parent directories that it needs to. Okay, and now we can mount our home directory. So mount dev VDA3 to mount /home. And the same with our EFI partition. Dev VDA1 mount boot EFI. Now, if we take a look at our block devices, you'll see that they are mounted on the file system as you would expect them to be. Now we're going to want to run the packstrap command. The packstrap command essentially installs the minimum packages needed to actually be a Arch system. So for this, we're going to do packstrap on the mount folder, and then we get to pipe in a bunch of things that we want to install. So base, Linux, Linux firmware, Linux headers, and then you'll probably want to do mandb, man pages, text info, and what those are is essentially just your help files and your man kind of database, hence mandb. We'll also want a way to connect to the network. I like to use DHCP-CD. Network Manager is fine too. This is a little lighter weight. So DHCP-CD. We're going to want a text editor. I'll do vim. Let's install git as well, grub, and EFI boot manager, or MGR. Let's see, do we need anything else in here? Oh, we're going to want sudo. No, I think that's it. Alright, we'll be back when this is done. Alright, and that didn't take too terribly long. Next thing we're going to do is actually generate the file system tables. With that, Arch has a very simple command called genfstab. I actually really wish this was on other distributions. I tried to use this on Debian not too long ago just to find out that it doesn't actually exist on Debian, which really kind of chapped my ass. Because it's so ridiculously handy to be able to generate your file system tables just based on what is mounted. But to do that, you type in gen fstab-u. You could also use -l. -u will put them in the fstab file using their UUIDs as opposed to their labels. Their UUIDs will not change unless you reformat them with a different file system. Their labels you can change willy-nilly. So -u is generally safer. So gen fstab-u and then /mount. And we want to throw this into mount etc fstab. Alright, now let's actually change our root into our new installation. So arch chroot /mnt. And you see our prompt just changed. We are in our Arch installation right now. Now what we need to do is we need to hook up our time zone. So ln-sf/user share zone info America Chicago. And it's just Chicago is one of the most commonly used ones for the central time zone in the United States. I believe there's several other time zones you could, or cities that you could use in the central time zone, but I just know Chicago exists, so I use Chicago. We just set up our hardware clock. So that is HW clock --SYSTOHC. Okay, and then we need to kind of set up our locale. So we need to edit the etc/locale.gen file and search for our kind of locale string. In this case, it's going to be en_us, and we're going to want the UTF-8 one. I could just uncomment this line here, but that doesn't feel like the appropriate thing to do. If you go down another time, you'll find it down here. You just uncomment that, and then just run the locale gen script. So locale gen. Okay. Now what we need to do is create a hostname file. To do this, you could open up a new file in your editor, or you could simply just type it in. In this case, I'm going to type it in. So I'm going to do echo YouTube Arch into EDC hostname. And that'll, if we cat out EDC hostname, you'll see that our hostname was applied correctly. Alright, now let's make sure that our network will be up and running when we actually boot into this. So system control, enable DHCP CD. Alright, next let's set up a RIP password. Alright, and now that we have a RIP password set, let's set up a non-root user. So user add -m. -m will give that user a home folder, also allow them to log in. So user add -m, name of the user, and then -G, and then these are the groups that you want to give to the user, essentially give them permission. So wheel is essentially the admin group for Arch systems, as well as several other systems use the wheel group as the quote-unquote admin. Next we want optical disk storage. Actually, I can't think of what the other ones are. If we run into issues, we'll have to add some more, but for now I know those will be fine. Now let's give that user a password. So PASSWD and the name of the new user. And then just type in the password. Okay. And now we need to essentially generate the init RAM file system. In this case, we're going to want to do the command make init cpio-p. And this will just essentially rebuild your init RAM system. Okay, next let's install, I believe we actually have grub installed already. I'm fairly certain we do. Let's try to grub install EFI directory. Oh, it's been a while since I've done this. I'm not sure if that's the correct one. /boot/EFI bootloader ID equals grub. I feel like I'm missing something from here. Let's try it. No? Finished with no errors? Okay. So grub make config -o for output, and then where we want the grub config to be. So /boot/grub/grub.c.cfg. And I think I've run this command hundreds of times, regenerating my grub config. You'd think I'd make an alias by now, but I don't think I will ever forget the actual syntax to that command there. Okay. And that should be everything in order for us to actually reboot into the system. So let's exit out of this chroot environment, unmount everything, and reboot. Alright, so far so good. Let's see if our login works. Oh, we forgot to add ourselves to the root. Or to the wheel group. That's easy enough, okay. So SU to switch user to the super user. And now we're going to want to edit a file called vi sudo. Except we're nope, I don't want to use a vi editor. I want to use vim, so I'm going to do editor equal vim and vi sudo. And let's search for wheel. There we go. Comment out that line. And save that. Now, we should be able to do our own sudo. So let's install Let's just install a desktop environment quick. Sudo apt install sudo pacman-s. Man, I've been on Debian for a while now. It's been a while since I've done anything on Arch. Alright, sudo pacman-S to xorg server, xorg xrandr. Let's add in Alacrity, Vivaldi, Dolphin, Plasma, and I think that might be everything that we're going to need right off the bat. We have the X server, we have xrandr to change our resolution, we have a terminal, or a terminal emulator, we have a browser, we have a file explorer, we have an environment. Okay. Oh, did I spell plasma wrong? I sure did. P-L-A-S-M-A. There we go. And we're just going to take the defaults for basically everything that's going to be coming now. I'll see you when it's all done. Okay, and now we have everything installed. We're going to want to make sure that SDDM, the display manager for KDE Plasma, is enabled. So sudo system control enable SDDM. Okay. Oh man. I'm excited. It's been a while since I've gone through this process. I really enjoy doing this. It's strange. I've seen like this exact set of commands. I've typed in basically the exact things that I've just typed in, dozens of times. Watch the exact same thing happen, and every time I just get kind of giddy getting up to it. It's I don't know. It's a lot of fun to basically create this up from scratch. Feels like you're really building something, which I suppose is probably why I became a software developer. I just like to build stuff. Okay, and you'll see that the resolution here is quite terrible. Let's see what it actually is at now. Is it not under... Okay, maybe it's under desktop. Screen? Display configuration. So, yeah, they don't have... Like, they have a 2560 by 1080. That's a weird size. Let's just create one quick. I will speed through this. You don't have to sit here and watch this. If you're interested in how this works, I have a video for this on my Bare Bones a Beautiful series. And like the second or third one, whichever one does custom resolutions. If you haven't watched those, by the way, I'd watch them. Although they are pretty rough, just so you know. Alright, and let's see if that worked out. Alrighty, here we go. Looks like we have our resolution all set correctly. We have a file manager. We have a web browser. Oh, that's missing some features right now. That's fine. Don't ever show that again. Thanks. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, that is the quick Arch install. That was a lot more fun than I thought it was gonna be. I just there's something about that process that just it's I just enjoy the hell out of it. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I'm Sky Knight. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. See you later.